Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the second and final candidate forum for the 2023 State Bar of Texas President-elect race. I'm Santos Vargas. I'm the immediate past chair of the State Bar Board of Directors, and I'm here with Sylvia Borunda Firth, the bar's immediate past president. As co-chairs of the board's Nominations and Elections Committee, this year we are moderators for today's forum.
Good afternoon. We are joined by Jerry Alexander of Dallas and Steve Benesh of Austin, who are both running to become the next president-elect of the State Bar of Texas. This forum is a chance for Texas lawyers to meet the candidates and learn more about their platforms. If you missed the first candidate forum on March the 10th, we invite you to watch it on the State Bar's YouTube channel or listen to the replay on the State Bar of Texas podcast feed.
Sylvia and I will be asking the candidates questions related to the practice of law and governance of the State Bar of Texas, and those of you watching live can submit questions in writing using the Zoom Q&A feature, and we will get to them as time allows.
This forum will be 1 hour, and we want to get through as many questions as possible, so the candidates will have 2 minutes to answer each question. We'll start with introductions. Jerry and Steve, would you each take a minute to introduce yourself? And let's start with Steve.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you to everyone who is watching. Thank you to Sylvia and Santos and to Jerry for being here. My name is Steve Benesh. I am an attorney. Just celebrated my 35th year of practice with Bracewell. I'm married to Jennifer Benesh. Jennifer and I met while we were in college. Actually met in a pharmacy. I called the next day and asked if I could get the phone number from a colleague, and the very first word she said to me when I called to ask her out is, "How did you get my number?" We dated 4 years all the way through college, got married just before law school. We have 2 children, Will, who's 33 and lives in New York, he's a banker, and Austin, who's 31, who's a lawyer who lives in the DC area. As I mentioned, I have been with my law firm, Bracewell, for 35 years. I practice commercial litigation. It's been a stretch to retain, but I have my full-time practice during this campaign, just a lot of early mornings, late nights, and weekends. The first 12 years of my career were in Houston, and then after 12 years, I moved to the Austin office and served as managing partner of the Austin office of my law firm. My wife and I live on a small ranch in the community of Dripping Springs, just west of Austin. And thank you again for those who have dialed in.
Hello, my name is Jerry Alexander. I'm a lawyer. I'm from Dallas, Texas. I've been practicing law now for 50 years at a small Dallas firm called Passman & Jones. I started in the mailroom and as a court runner, and then was one of the first law clerks in Dallas, and then have been there ever since. I'm married to Sherry Alexander, who is also a lawyer. She works for a law firm and does healthcare law. I'm not sure it's important, but our courtship was a little different. I met her and proposed marriage to her 19 days after I met her. We got married within a few months, and in August we will have been married 40 years. We have 2 children, Matthew, who's married to Elia and has a grandbaby, Emma, and my daughter, Mackenzie, who's marrying Ben in October. My practice has been a general practice with a focus in litigation. I'm a working attorney and have worked full-time this entire campaign, including a jury trial that I just completed that went from January 5th to about February 12th. In Tarrant County. I appreciate everybody dialing in, and I'm looking forward to answering your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Steve. Jerry, you're going to be in the hot seat first. What is the role of a State Bar president, and what leadership traits would you bring to the job if elected? And Jerry, as soon as you're done, Steve, you're up next.
The role of the president, if you look at the State Bar of Texas Act of 1939 and the bylaws, the role of the president is basically to be a spokesperson for the State Bar of Texas. He's only one of 2 people authorized to speak in behalf of the State Bar, the other being the executive director. But basically what the president has to do is get an agenda and work with the board officers, the other officers, and convince them and the board to move forward with their agenda. You also have to get the people energized, lawyers in the state of Texas, so they're interested in what you're doing. I think what I can bring to that is I have done those things at two different levels. I did them at the Dallas Bar Association and brought a lot of different groups together to deal with very, very, very thorny issues. And I also worked as chairman of the State Bar of Texas in 2019 and 2020 and got us through some things where we had to have everybody agree to things, build a consensus, and what have you. I would really like to do this job, and I would really like to help the working lawyers in the state of Texas.
Steve?
Thank you, Santos, and thank you, Jerry. The president of the State Bar is the voice and face of the legal profession in Texas. And I think the most important trait, it is a servant leader position, the most important trait is to listen. And I think I bring that to the job. I have now traveled 17,000 miles and taken 85 separate trips to cities across the state of Texas to do exactly that, to listen and to ask questions. What bothers you? What, as an attorney, keeps you up at night? What are the issues you believe with the State Bar in your local practices? And then it is the president's job, having listened and having understood the issues that his or her constituents have, to lead the bar in addressing them. It is the job of the State Bar to make sure no one feels left out or left behind or minimized or disregarded or forgotten. And that has been the priority of my campaign these past 7 months. And if I'm elected, that will be the priority of my presidency, to go to where our constituents are, regardless of where that is, to listen to what their issues and problems and concerns and questions are, and to lead the bar in actively addressing, correcting, improving each of those issues.
Thank you both.
Thank you. And I'd like to remind those of you that have tuned in that we are taking questions from the audience. So if you have a question that hasn't been answered by either of these candidates, please feel free to send it in and we'll try to get to as many of your questions as possible. So the next question is a little bit long because encased in the question is the mission of the State Bar. So the mission of the State Bar is to support the administration of the legal system, assure all citizens equal access to justice, foster high standards of ethical conduct for lawyers, enable its members to better serve their clients and the public, to educate the public about the rule of law, and promote diversity in the administration of justice and the practice of law. We all should be able to say that right off the top of our heads, right? But within that framework of the bar's mission and statutory purposes, what do you think the State Bar should focus on to ensure it remains relevant and meaningful to the attorney members? And we'll start with you, Steve.
Well, thank you, Sylvia. It's a great question. One of the biggest problems I think that the State Bar faces is apathy. There are now over, I think the last count, over 111,000 lawyers in the state of Texas. And if in the election this month, in April and through May 2nd, if 25,000 of the 111,000 attorneys vote, that would be remarkable. And so apathy, I think, is an issue. And for us to be relevant, I think we need to make sure and do a better job of marketing the good works that the State Bar does every day. For a lot of people, I think they regard the State Bar as their home air conditioning unit. As long as it's working, they don't think about it. You don't wake up in the morning and praise your AC or heater for working, but if it goes out, it will be the source of your attention. And we do so many things well. The Texas Lawyers Assistance Program is remarkable. The grievance system can be oiled and tweaked and improved, but it works. The offerings of continuing legal education around the state are excellent, could be tweaked and improved. But I think we need to do a better job. We need to do a better job of making sure that everyone feels as if they are represented, that there is someone like him like them, whose practice is like theirs, who comes from where they are and has their interest at heart in serving the bar. It is a perilous time to have an apathetic bar at a very time when we value the importance of our self-governance. Everyone needs to recognize why a self-governing bar is important. We need to make sure everyone understands why the bar matters, not only in their practices, but in their personal lives as well. And I would enjoy the opportunity to lead the bar in doing exactly that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia.
Jerry, same question.
Yeah, well, I carry a copy of the mission statement with me. We've been sometimes criticized for not being within the mission statement. It's a wonderful statement because it is directed at the lawyers of the state of Texas. The apathy, I agree there is some apathy, but I think that comes about from what I would call intangibility. The attorneys forget about the things that have come from thousands of hours of work by very, very talented lawyers, like the pattern jury charges. I've never been in a trial where the judge, the first thing they didn't go to is the pattern jury charges. Those came from the state bar, from the litigation committee, from the litigation section. Same thing with the probate forms and the real estate forms. These are starting places. People take that for granted. What I've found when in my travels from around the state and talking to people is that it's not the practice of law that bothers them so much, but it's the business of practicing law. And I started talking to people about, well, what could the state bar do with 111,000 people with buying power and that kind of momentum behind them do to make the business of practicing law easier? First of all, health insurance is a big concern. I think we can do better. The state bar has done a great job. To go to 0 to 1 is infinite, but we can do better. That's a big thing. The grievance system needs to be overhauled. I would form a 3-year task force. Attorneys are very concerned about that because it's annoying when they get these things that are not really grievances, but they have to respond to them. We can separate those dealing with money and those not dealing with money, and then subdivide the ones dealing with money on whether or not it was a fee dispute or whether or not it was a lawyer taking some money, those kinds of things. We could do some tangible good for the lawyers and actually make the state bar relevant and important to their daily practice. The other thing that I've found recently in traveling around is this is a huge state, and the Valley feels separated from people, and West Texas feels separated from people. And they look at the I-35 corridor kind of as, well, that's really where the state bar is, and you know, we're out here or we're out there. We have a leadership conference every year. I would say that the state bar ought to sponsor leadership conferences for East Texas, West Texas, and the Valley before those conferences, so they could come and get their agendas done and then come to the big leadership conference and talk about ways to become more connected. Return to the office is a big issue now. I don't know what the state bar can do about that, but it's another example of how things are changing, and we need to work hard to give tangible benefits to our members so they won't be apathetic.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. We have our first question from the audience, and this is from Mr. Alan R. Jackson, Assistant United States Attorney from Tyler, Texas. The Committee on Disciplinary Rules and Referenda has proposed an amendment to Rule 3.09 of the Texas Disciplinary Rules addressing duties of a prosecutor who learns of new evidence post-conviction that might bring into question the validity of the conviction. I would like to know the candidate's position on whether the rule as proposed should be adopted. Jerry, you're first.
I'm really not, I'll be perfectly frank with you, I'm not familiar with the exact terms of that rule. One of the things, though, that I would like to do very much is get the prosecutors, district attorneys, and U.S. attorneys more involved in the State Bar of Texas and get the criminal practice more involved in the State Bar of Texas so we can have meaningful input from those members at a high level, at the board level, when things like this come up. I'm trying to get in to see district attorneys. U.S. attorneys say that they don't do that, but I would involve people from the criminal bar a lot more than they are involved by inviting them, reaching out to them to be on committees and to be on things to study this. Since I do not know the exact words of the thing that is proposed, and I do not know exactly what it says, I really don't have a cogent comment on that right now, other than the great way to address things like this is to have more people that are involved in the criminal practice on both sides of the docket involved in state bar activities and on the board.
Thank you, Santos. I am familiar with that proposed revision to Disciplinary Rule 3.09, which has to do with prosecutorial authority. There are three things about the proposed revision that caused me some concern. One is the cradle to grave aspect of it, that even after a prosecutor leaves his or her position, the ongoing duty continues, and that's troublesome to me. The second thing I don't particularly understand and would need further explanation about is the necessity of the proposed revision, given the Michael Morton Act and given the recent revisions to the Government Code, I think 81072, which seem to do that which the revision seeks to achieve. I guess the third is I'm concerned about stretching resources too thin in connection with the duty to investigate and remedy that the revision contemplates. So those three things, the cradle to grave aspect, the fact that existing law appears to address the subject of the revision, and then just the thin resources that prosecutors' offices have available to them to satisfy this new duty to investigate and remedy. And before the revision, and it's the subject of obviously public hearing and discussion right now, but before that revision is finalized, I would like to come to shore on each of those three issues.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, let's talk a little bit about members of the public who are not lawyers. As an administrative arm of the judicial branch of the government, the State Bar has a significant role to play in serving the public. Considering this role, what should the State Bar focus on to ensure it remains relevant and meaningful to our fellow Texans who are not lawyers? Steve, you want to go ahead and go first with that one?
Of course. Well, we serve non-lawyers. Our clients, many of them are non-lawyers, and we certainly need there are a number of things we can do to make sure that to non-lawyers, to the citizens of Texas, that the existence of the State Bar is relevant. One of the things that I think we can do, for example, is expansion of the Texas Lawyers Assistance Program. The non-lawyers who are served by lawyers around the state, the services that are provided to them are detrimentally affected when the attorneys who are representing them are struggling either with mental health issues or with substance abuse issues, which are both very common in our profession. And I think we can do a better job through TLAP, which I am a huge fan of helping attorneys to get their lives back on the rails in connection with those issues, and therefore more effectively dispatch the legal responsibilities that they have to their non-lawyer clients. One of the things that I believe that we should take a look at is the creation of a docket assistance program within TLAP. And that is a pool of volunteer lawyers who could step into the breach in an attorney's practice when he or she needs to step away to seek the assistance they need for the issues that they're struggling with. That does not currently exist in TLAP. I think we could do a better job in TLAP of marketing the wellness offerings. We tend to think of TLAP as the garage that you take your car into when the transmission's out, but not where you get your tires rotated and your oil changed. And I think we can do a better job of helping lawyers know there is wellness assistance from TLAP to assist them in keeping their lives on the rails. And I think that's very important as well. I believe that we can do a better job with regard to electronic filing. Oftentimes the representation of clients is hindered by the idiosyncrasies of electronic filing varying from state to state, and from county to county, and I would like to standardize electronic filing. I would also like to encourage pro bono service. I'm a big fan of permitting the current State Bar program of permitting retired lawyers and lawyers from other states and rendering pro bono legal services in Texas. And so I think I'm near the end of my time, but among other things, those are what I believe we could do a better job of that would have ripple effects, positive impact on non-lawyers in the state of Texas.
Thank you. Jerry?
Can I have the question again?
Sure. So we're talking about the role the State Bar serves with regard to non-lawyers. So the question is, considering that role, what should the State Bar focus on to ensure it remains relevant and meaningful to our fellow Texans who are not lawyers?
Well, if you're talking about providing the provision of legal services to people that are non-lawyers, that's the day-to-day things and what have you. Then we have in the mission statement, we are to provide equal access to justice to all citizens of the state of Texas. And we have to work on that very hard. It's so difficult to raise the money every year to keep the staffs going and to keep things staffed. But it's very, very important work. That's something that I was very active in at the Dallas Bar Association. I raised $700,000 in a year for those programs. But I think the question is probably broader than that, on just the public perception of lawyers and what lawyers do and their relevance to society and if they are important or not. We are part of the only legal system in the world that works. And it doesn't matter if you're a plaintiff or a defendant or you're conservative or a progressive or you do contracts or wills or what have you. We are part of that system, and the system is there for members of the public to use. And they say, okay, well, if I have a problem, I can go to this system. So the system should be welcoming to the citizens of the state of Texas, and people should be told. And one of the things that I would do as president is go around and I would talk to non-lawyer groups. I enjoy doing that very much. I've done that my entire career, and explain to them all of the good things that lawyers do and all of the good things that come about because of lawyers and the legal system that we have that works. I think people forget about that, and people need to be reminded of that, and there are just hundreds and hundreds of examples of lawyers that are taking the lead in charity work, in doing things that are good for the community, and that's one of the things that I would be sure that I did, that the people that are not presently involved in the legal system as clients understand what a good profession we have and how 99.9% of the people that practice in that profession are wonderful, down-to-earth, working people trying to make a living like everybody else, but also trying to do the right thing.
Thank you both. Next question. Please list 2 specific actions you propose to ensure improved access to civil legal aid for the public. Jerry, you're up first.
Civil legal aid is there are organizations that are set up that are charitable organizations where if you make a contribution, you get a deduction. There's Landwit in North Texas. I can't remember the acronym for the one in the Valley. There's one in West Texas and there's one in East Texas. These are the things that need to be improved and are actually maintained and funded. It's difficult to get money for those organizations from the legislature now. It's not impossible, but we need to keep doing that. The Supreme Court does a good job in trying to do that, and so we have to keep that going. The thing that I hear is, I don't think is true in North Texas, but may be true other places. What I hear is that there aren't enough lawyers that will volunteer to provide the legal services, because the money that's raised does not go to lawyers to provide the services. It goes to these organizations to qualify the people to be sure that they are within the certain amount of the poverty line so they are eligible, and then to match them up with a volunteer lawyer. As I've traveled the state and talked to firms, what I've seen is the young people are coming to the office, the young people are eager and they want to do things. What I would do is I would go around to all of the large firms in the state of Texas and all the firms and make it generally known that what we expect of the attorneys and the firms is for them to provide volunteers to represent our citizens in these pro bono cases. So there are enough lawyers. The young people would love to do it because they would get a trial, they would get client contact, they would get all of the things that sometimes they don't. But then they have these billable hour budgets that they have to meet and things like that. I would try to get us to all work together and to understand that, have management of these firms understand what I do, that you can get a lot of good legal experience to a young attorney quickly by having them handle a pro bono case on their own, and it benefits them, and it benefits the firm, and it benefits the client, and it benefits the public. It's a win-win, win-win. I think that's 4 wins, and that's what I would encourage everybody to do.
Steve?
Several things, Santos. One is, as I mentioned in the response I gave to Sylvia a moment ago, I'm a big fan and supporter of the State Bar program that permits retired attorneys and attorneys licensed in other states to render pro bono legal services here. It may be one of the State Bar's best kept secrets, though, and I think we could do a better job of marketing that availability and encouraging attorneys in those 2 categories to step up and render pro bono legal services. Another thing is, I believe that we need to continue to provide and market the availability of CLE credit for both the mentorship and receipt of mentorship in connection with pro bono assistance, training lawyers to render pro bono legal services, and the receipt of that training should receive CLE credit. The disincentive of the time that it takes to do so, both to give and to receive, would be removed in connection with providing CLE credit. I think we could be of assistance in cultivating a culture of pro bono in the law schools. And I've spoken with most of the deans of the law schools around the state. I had the opportunity to meet with all 3 deans in Houston at the same time at an event a couple of months ago. And we've begun to discuss ways that the State Bar can more proactively step into the law schools to not only teach lessons of civility and professionalism, but begin to cultivate that culture of service to those who are unable to afford legal services. And the last thing is, I would like to partner with local bars in developing pro bono initiatives in each of the local bars. I would love to see, around the state, I would love to see the State Bar facilitate pro bono training at locations around the state. From East to West Texas to the Panhandle in the Valley, and assist in facilitating those pro bono programs wherever they may exist.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. So both of you have talked about being the president of the State Bar and how that's the image, the face, the voice of the State Bar. So I'd like to ask you all both to tell me something that one message you would bring about something that the bar does well. Let's talk something positive right now. And I think, Steve, you're up first.
It would have to be, and you've heard me sing the praises already a couple times, the Texas Lawyers Assistance Program. Our lawyer assistance program in Texas is the envy of the country. There are so many folks. I have friends who tell me they're alive today because either they or someone on their behalf made a call or a reach out to TLAP at just the right time. But it's a private process, and so people don't often sing their praises. Some do. But it is life-changing. And it's available not just to lawyers, it's available to judges, it's available to law students. And beyond that, one of the things that TLAP has is the Sharon Crowley Trust. And there is no trust like it anywhere else in the country. That is a charitable trust that if someone cannot afford the assistance that they need with the either mental health or substance abuse issues that they're struggling with, the trust will cover it. If the deductible is too high on their insurance, the trust will cover it. If their insurance has an exclusion or an exemption that doesn't cover the help they need, the trust will cover it. Now, we've got to keep that cup filled up, and we could do a better job of marketing the opportunities to support the Sharon Crowley Trust. But the work of TLAP is transformative and life-changing. And if we, going back to the question about how do we solve the problem of apathy, one of the ways we can do it is making people aware that lives are improved every day, both lawyers and the constituents that we serve, by the wonderful work of the Texas Lawyers Assistance Program.
Jerry?
Well, I agree that the Texas Lawyers Assistance Program is one of the things that the State Bar does very well, and it could become something that the State Bar of Texas does in spectacular fashion. And I can't say it any better than Steve said it. So I will say something else and point something else out that people complain about and that they ought to appreciate more, and that's the fabulous continuing legal education that you get from the State Bar of Texas. It's an unusual situation, I think, where you have a state bar that is as dedicated to that. And what you get, if you take these state bar courses, what you get is you get the best practitioners at that moment talking about how they have successfully done something, closed a real estate deal, written a will, tried a case, put some evidence in, taken some evidence out, and it's right then and right there, and you feel caught up and edified, and everybody says, well, you know, we complain about this requirement. It is very, very, very excellent training. It keeps everyone sharp. I would like to expand that good thing and make it even better. We've had so many people who have to leave the profession for a while because of personal issues, their own health, health of children, raising children, elder care, or they leave the state, and that's not a licensing situation. It is, they've kept their license, they've kept up with their CLE, but they want to join the workforce again because they need to. They need the money. This came about from me talking to a woman who'd been recently widowed. She wanted to get back into the practice, but she didn't know how. So me and basically a lot of other people helped her get up to speed on things, and so she's back practicing now. I think the state bar should provide a boot camp for these people at least once a year. It should be free. They'd have to pay their own expenses, but to come in and have judges and lawyers and the best CLE and district clerks about how to file things and people about how to do research and get them back up to speed and give them the confidence, and also have some headhunters, some managing partners come in and talk about what law firms were looking for so they could get back into the practice, because they would be terrific additions to our practice, because not only do they have law degrees, but now they have life wisdom. And so those would be the things that I think the State Bar does extraordinarily well and could do really, really more extraordinarily well if we had a program like that.
Thank you both. Before we move on to our next question, I do want to remind the audience that you can submit questions for the two candidates via the Q&A feature on Zoom. So we've had a couple come in so far. We'd like more from you, so please keep the questions rolling in. Our next question is from one of our viewers, and we're going to start with you, Jerry. Recently, students at Stanford Law School shouted down a federal judge. What steps do you suggest to the State Bar take to support the judiciary and the rule of law?
Well, we have to support the judiciary and have the rule of law. The incident at Stanford, of course, like I said, I wasn't there, but from what I heard about it, I was just very, very distressed by that law students would do that to someone, a jurist that they had invited to come speak. I don't know what happened or why that happened. But we should all support the judiciary. People have to understand that you can't get justice from one point of view. Dr. King said that while the arc of morality is vast, it bends toward justice. Well, it bends toward justice because of the judiciary and because of the advocates that are that appear before the judiciary, and those advocates, not surprisingly, have different points of view. But out of that discussion, out of that advocacy, justice comes. And we have to support the rule of law, because when people lose respect for what the courts do and the orders that they make and what have you, then we're done. We're done as a profession, and we're probably done as a country and a society. Like I said before, we have the only legal system that works. But the way it works is many different points of views come into the system. There's rules. People follow the rules. Judges make orders. If you don't like the order, you can't appeal. But once that's done, it's done. And if we're lawyers and it's the law, then we have to respect it and we have to follow it, even if we personally disagree with it. And there will be another time when another point of view can be forwarded, and maybe there'll be another result.
Thank you, Jerry. Steve?
Thank you, Santos. Two things. Well, let me back up a little bit. I think perhaps now in our society we live in a time of greater polarity in views and divisiveness than perhaps ever before, certainly in recent history. It seems as if so many believe that if they're right, not only is the other side wrong, but they're dead wrong and are irredeemable in their viewpoint. There is less effort to reach across the aisle, less effort to find a compromise, a mutually acceptable resolution, less effort to understand differing points of view, at least than I recall in my lifetime. And that's the way law students come into our law schools, from a polarized society, and unless they're instructed otherwise, that's the way they enter our profession. And so I think it's, and let me back up for a second, that's not how our profession operates. We are devoted to the principles of civility and professionalism and mutual respect, which is contrary to a popular view in society today, as I just described it. And so I think there are two things we can do. And I've had conversations with each of the law deans that I've spoken with, law school deans, on this very topic, taking students who enter law school from a polarized society and producing lawyers on the back end who recognize and respect and revere the principles of civility and mutual respect. And there are two things. One is I would like to see the state bar more involved entering the law schools and providing lessons and examples on those topics of mutual respect, professionalism, and civility in the profession. So that's while in law school. And then second, I'm a huge fan of the state bar assisting the local bars and the sections of the state bar in developing mentorship programs where younger lawyers can be mentored by more experienced practitioners, not only on the aspects of the business of law, but the principles upon which our profession is based, and that is mutual respect, civility, respect for disparate viewpoints, and an earnest desire to understand the positions of those with whom we find ourselves in conflict.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to give you all a question that's near and dear to my heart. So what do you see as the state bar's role in promoting and pursuing diversity, equity, and inclusion in the legal profession? And Jerry, we'll start with you. Oh, no, I'm sorry, Steve. You must have went out of order.
That's okay.
Steve.
You know, it's interesting because that's at the center of my campaign. Each candidate for office is asked to develop or find a tagline or a motto or a slogan. You pick your word for it. The one I chose is one bar, many voices. The more I traveled around the state these past 7 months, and I'm like Carmen Sandiego, I have been everywhere. I've heard more and more, you know, I feel like based on who I am sociodemographically or what my practice is in-house or in government or in private practice or a solo practice or a small firm practice or a big firm practice or with an agency or I'm on the criminal side or I'm on the civil side or I'm on the plaintiff side, I'm on the defense side, or I live a long way away from the middle of Texas. More and more I've heard people say, well, I don't know if there's someone who really understands me or represents my viewpoints or concerns at the state bar. And that can lead to the apathy that we're talking about. And so I chose one bar, many voices as my slogan. That yes, we are one state bar, but there are many voices that we need to listen to. We talked about listening earlier. We need to understand their concerns, and they need to feel like they have a seat at the table as much as anyone else. And we also need to make sure and take a look at the composition of our state bar board and our sections and our committees and make sure that it is representative of a cross-section of who we are as a profession, that no one feels minimized, all viewpoints are respected, everyone feels as if there is someone who represents their interests and needs. And as State Bar President, I would be intentional in making sure that we are indeed an accurate reflection of the full cornucopia of who we are as a profession today.
Thank you. Jerry?
The thing that's missing on the on diversity, I think, from my experience, is we need to recruit people to run for the State Bar Board that are otherwise reticent because they don't think they could win. I did this in Dallas with some people. As a matter of fact, with one person who eventually got on the board, I promised them they would not win the first time, but they would win the second time, and that's exactly what happened. There's a reticence by a lot of people to take the risk that they might lose, and that's not a real risk because people get to know them, they get to know their name, and then eventually they get elected. When you come in to make your committee appointments as the chair of the board, I had a thing that was all worked out, and I had been very careful to make all of the appointments, I thought, correctly, so it was reflective of the membership of the bar and the membership of the board. And and then I was told that, well, you forgot about geography, and we forget about geography. Diversity, geography is a big part of it. And I've told you what I would do. I would have these sort of leadership conferences for different regions of the state first before the big leadership conference, so they could develop their own ideas about how to become more included. On gender and ethnicity, all of those things are underway. We need to continue those. But the most important thing is when we all get together, whether it's on a board or a committee or face-to-face or in court, is that we respect each other. And we have to understand that we're all lawyers, which means we have more in common with each other than we do with the vast majority of other people on earth. And we need to focus on the things that we need to do for each other and together as lawyers, and let the other stuff be kind of background noise. And as long as we do that, we will keep going and keep having good diversity.
Thank you very much. So we've touched, or you've both touched on our next topic a little bit, but I'd like to hear a little bit more detail. And specifically, the question is, what should the State Bar do to guide and prepare the next generation of lawyers? And Jerry, I'd like to hear from you first.
It should do a lot, and it should do more than it's ever done before. And the reason it should do more than it's ever done before is because of COVID and the return to office policies or lack thereof, and the fact that in most law offices that you walk around in, there are not people there that have face-to-face collaborations on things. When I walk around law firms now, I see the young people, that the practice is new, they're excited about their new office, and I see people that have been there a long time, or maybe are getting ready to go of counsel or out, but the middle, the people that have other things going on in their lives, children and what have you, they like to work from home as much as they can. And what you miss out on when that happens is the collaboration, the face-to-face collaboration, the passing on of how to practice law, because obviously if it's a firm and been in existence, somebody knew how to do it, correctly. And the State Bar should have a mentorship program. In my platform, from day one, printed in my brochure, has been a mentorship program. And if you've been practicing law for more than 10 years and are in good standing, then I'm going to call on you to get on the mentorship list. The new students coming out, they can choose a mentor if they want to, by geography, by gender, by age. Who would they be most comfortable talking to? They may be most comfortable talking to somebody that's not even in the same town. But there's so many ways to communicate now. There's phone, and there's Zoom, and there's face-to-face. And to have somebody to sit there that they can ask questions to, The law schools could do a better job, I think, of trying to prepare these students to practice law, but it's very difficult to change curricula in law schools. The University of North Texas in Dallas has done that. Their third year is called an experiential year, where basically they intern someplace. Texas Tech has an internship program, but it's really difficult to change the curricula and to get a large number of students involved in that. But the State Bar needs to have a program that comes out when they get their law license, that says, since you're licensed, if you want to mentor, here's a mentorship program. You choose from this list, and then we go from there on an individual basis, and that would be a really good start.
Thank you, Jerry. Steve?
Sure. Three things, and two of them I've touched on a little bit earlier, and I think Jerry actually just touched on a couple of them. I mentioned earlier the more active involvement of the State Bar in entering into the law schools and providing relevant instruction to law students. I've had the opportunity, as I mentioned earlier, to speak to almost all of the deans, not quite yet, in the state of Texas during my travels. I've grouped some together and had individual conversations with others as recently as last week, as a matter of fact, on this very topic. And they are enthusiastic about the State Bar playing a more active role, more of a handshake relationship between the profession as represented by the State Bar and preparation for the profession as represented by the law schools around our state. Not only the lessons of civility and professionalism that we discussed earlier, but also the business of practicing law to better prepare young attorneys for the business side of operating a legal practice. And I think that the State Bar could do a great job of entering into the law schools, providing relevant instruction and giving law students a running start. The second thing that I talked about a little bit earlier, and Jerry touched on it, is the facilitation and encouragement of mentoring programs for young lawyers. The State Bar should work in partnership with the local bar associations and with the sections of the State Bar to facilitate mentoring programs to prepare lawyers for the business of practicing law and for understanding the basic principles of how we regard and treat each other as professionals. The third is, I think we could do things to make the State Bar website more user-friendly for younger lawyers who often the State Bar website is their first stop in looking for an answer to questions regarding the practice and the profession. One of the things that I would like to do, for example, is create a big virtual button on the main page of the State Bar website that is a link to an online searchable database of the most common questions, issues, problems, and concerns that lawyers have, that's kept up to date with clear and concise answers. And if that didn't do it, by each one of them, a volunteer attorney's name and his or her email address and phone number, someone who has put their hand up in the air and agreed to be the go-to on that discrete issue in seeking resolution. Having something that user-friendly, where young lawyers or lawyers of any vintage could go to as a first stop to get an answer to the questions they have regarding the practice of law, and that at the very end of the line, if the prepared response isn't there, there is a more seasoned lawyer there to provide assistance and answers. So those three things, a more active presence in the law school, a more active encouragement and facilitation of mentorship programs, and an upgrade and improvement to the State Bar website.
Thank you.
Thank you. So both of you all have extensive experience as volunteers and in service to the profession. And so now I want to ask you, what is the most satisfying experience you've had in service to the bar or as a volunteer for the profession?
All right, thank you. That's an easy one for me. I am now in my 7th year of serving on the Board of Trustees for the Texas Bar Foundation. We serve together on the Texas Bar Foundation Board. I'm currently the chair-elect of the Texas Bar Foundation. It's been called two things. It's been called the charitable arm of the State Bar. It's been called the feel-good arm of the State Bar, because we take the donations of the fellows, practicing lawyers in the state, and we use them for the administration of justice and for ensuring equal access to justice for a variety of legal-related needs. And it's not just that we do good work, but one of the wonderful things about serving for so many years on the Texas Bar Foundation Board is that I have never ceased to be impressed with how diligent and conscientious the members of the board are in spending one entire day in the fall cycle and one entire day in the spring cycle, making sure that every area of the state, every type of legal need, every type of constituent or client is addressed down to the last dollar, how it's spent. And that's, again, it goes back to people realizing the good work of the bar. So many lives are made better by the dollars contributed by attorneys around the state, and through the deliberative and conscientious work of the Board of Trustees of the Bar Foundation. Lives are saved, lives are improved, and it's the best thing I've ever done with the State Bar.
Thank you. Jerry?
Well, I'm a life member of the State Bar Foundation. I guess I'd start by saying that I had a terrific run when I was president of the Dallas Bar Association in 2016 of three projects that were near and dear to my heart, but they were already kind of teed up. We built 2 Habitat for Humanity houses instead of the usual one that we do, because I got the great people in Dallas at AT&T to sponsor a second house. We raised over $1 million that year for the Dallas Volunteer Attorney Program with some great chairs that I'd helped get in there. And the third thing that happened that year was I did the mural project at the Dallas County Courthouse, where I coordinated the county commissioners, the Dallas Independent School District, the staff of the county that did the actual work. An artist raised money for it and changed an eyesore into a really pretty entryway. And those would all be great, great things to say, hey, that was really great. But the thing that I have enjoyed the most and got the most good feeling out of was being in a mentorship program and mentoring now 14 young lawyers, some of them not so young anymore, and we get together at least once a year and talk about things. And to see those young people grow, and the questions that they asked that were interesting, that we laugh about now, I think that's been the most rewarding thing, and that's how I know this mentorship thing will work once people start doing that. There's a study now that says that if you do a good deed for someone else, the person that gives actually gets as much or perhaps more benefit than the person that receives. And as soon as lawyers start doing that with these younger people, the younger people will energize them, and it will work, and we can pass things on to the younger people. But that's the most rewarding thing personally that I've done.
Thank you. Okay, we have one. Next question is a very serious question that everybody really wants to know the answer to. Hope you're prepared. What's the one thing you enjoy most about being a lawyer?
Well, I just won a trial, so that's hard to beat. That's hard to beat. I think the thing that I enjoy most about being a lawyer, and I still enjoy it, I enjoy the personal interactions. You have interactions with partners that you've been partners with for a long time. You have interactions with young people that are new in the firm. You have interactions with new clients or clients that you've represented for a long time. But the thing that I really, really enjoy is thinking. People pay us to think, thinking and then figuring something out. And it has kept me going and kept me alive, and they have found that rigorous mental exercise is one way to sort of keep fresh. Well, if you keep practicing law, you're not going to have any trouble doing that, because there's lots of things that come up. But I like all of those things. The other thing I do is I got a confession to make. I like lawyers. I like law. I even like Steve. I mean, I like all lawyers, because, like I said, we have so much in common, and it is a great profession. I would have nothing without this profession. My wife It's the same way. We owe it a lot, and I love it, and so I just like every part of it.
Thank you, Jerry. I want to make sure we get to Steve before we get to closing remarks. Steve, you're up.
Well, I'll be quick because not directly quoting Robin Williams' line at the end of Good Will Hunting, but Jerry stole my line, and I like Jerry too. It's exactly. I like what I do, and I like the people I do it with. I love, and I wrote down mental exercise. I love the mental exercise. Every case is different, even if it's the same type of case. There are nuances in the law, in fact, that I love the mental exercise of doing it, and I love the people I do it with. Sometimes, some people more often than others. There's stressful times, but being able to lay down our swords and shields and be friends after a case in which we're adversaries. I love other people who are passionate about the practice of law. One of the things a friend told me recently is you're going to find on this campaign trail that you're not exhausted. You, in fact, are energized. And it is because rather than being squeezed out like a sponge, you're going to draw energy in because you're going to be around people who are passionate about what they do and going to events where our profession is celebrated. So like Jerry, I love what I do, and I love the people I do it with.
Thank you very much, Steve. So we're nearly out of time. We're going to give each candidate 1 minute each to give a closing remarks. And Jerry, you're going to start first, and we're going to hear from Steve.
Okay. I'd really like to be president of the State Bar of Texas. There are some programs that I have in my platform that we've talked about here today, most of them. I have thought about those for a long time. I think I know how to get them done. I know how to get some of them done from my experience of being on the board of directors of the State Bar recently for 4 years and being chair of the board in 2019 and 2020. I love the profession. I love lawyers. I don't have any trouble talking to anybody about anything, and I've been told that I have the peculiar talent of being able to bring people together and to bring people that a lot of times you would not think could come to a common mind on something, being able to do that. I don't think we should have any trouble doing that, again, as long as we focus on the fact of the mission statement and that we are all lawyers and we're all in this together.
Thank you, Jerry. Steve?
Thank you, Santos. I want to begin with thank yous. Thank you to all of you who care enough about our profession and this decision to spend this hour with us. I thank you for that. I want to thank Sylvia. I want to thank Santos and the State Bar for facilitating this discussion today. I want to thank Jerry. Jerry's a gentleman, and I've enjoyed an opportunity, win or lose, to develop a friendship in Dallas, and so thank you for that. And I also want to thank, and I have to, my wife and my firm and my clients, because this hasn't been a 7-month vacation from a full-time legal practice, and they have been gracious in allowing me to render my legal services before the sun comes up and after it goes down, and on weekends to be able to travel to meet so many of you. I'm thankful for the many of you. I have now met and had individual conversations with over 20,000 lawyers in my travels around the state, and I have so many friends that I didn't have before, and I'm thankful for you taking time. I'm thankful for you sharing your concerns, your questions, and your problems. I have worked tirelessly this 7 months to get to know you and to hear you and to understand, and I've heard you. And if I'm elected, I will work tirelessly as your State Bar president. I will be here for you, and the door will always be open. And I thank you for that.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. I want to thank both the candidates for taking this on. I know firsthand what a challenge this has been for you all, and I really do appreciate people that are willing to step up and volunteer to do this. And I want to thank the viewers who joined us today. It is important for us all to participate in this election process. So after hearing them both, I challenge you all to, you've got it. You can go vote right now. As a reminder, the voting in the State Bar of Texas and the TYLA Association elections is already underway and will take place from now until May 2nd. And attorneys can vote using a paper ballot or an electronic ballot. And you can find more information at texasbar.com/elections. Don't miss this chance to exercise your right to vote and to send a message that Texas lawyers value our system of self-governance. Thank you all for tuning in today, and please get out there and vote. Thank you.
Thank you all.